Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusa.
Dear comrades, welcome to the edition of the Pan-African Pyramid Show. This one is a bit different. We are not in the hall now. We have met in the garden here. And your speaker is Andrew Irumba Katusa. This is the very first meeting since 2024. Mr. Mutatina, Lissafri Thomas from France. He's a freelance researcher. He's also a teacher. Mr. Dan Rugarama is the chairman of Pan-African Movement Uganda chapter. My name is Andrew Irumba Katusa. We are going to be looking at a number of issues, but let's begin with the very one that is happening right here in Kampala. Ladies and gentlemen, Uganda from January 2024 to 2026 will be chairing the non-aligned movement and the G77. For the next 3 years, President Museveni in particular will be the chair. We want to look at, first of all, the history of why non-aligned movement was started in 1961. That was pretty much during the Cold War between the East and the West. That's when they say, guys, every one of you wants to ask whom I support. What about if I have no one I'm supporting, but I'm supporting righteousness? And so how about if we are many of us, 120, and we follow no one, but we support righteousness. If you have done right, we shall say you are correct. If you have done wrong, we shall say you are wrong. And so we are like, no judges. Judges have no sides. He's just there impartial. He's waiting to say you are wrong and you are right. And that is now an amalgamation of 120 countries. Then there is also the G77 plus China. I don't know why they don't say G78. Why are they saying G77 plus
China?
Why is it a plus?
China escaped the grouping of the first
cohort. So if you came afterwards, can they say now we are 78?
I don't think they can say we are 78 because I think they want to remain outsiders because China is also involved in its own politics, especially regarding the BRICS. They are busy trying to make sure the economy use less and less dollars. So the Americans are not so much at the center of international trade. So I think that's why they say G77 plus China.
Okay, Mr. Rugarama, give us some, you are a historian, give us a bit history about NAM. Why it was started. There must be those key issues that informed the formation of G77 and then NAM, especially NAM. What could be some of those historical factors that led to the formation of these two?
Thank you so much, Comrade Irumba. It's been a while. I have been seeing you with the refugees. That's the noble cause.
Yes.
With our brother from Ireland.
Yes.
Who was here not long ago when we were having the award.
Award, yes. Our brother Paul Flynn from Germany.
And people may not know, but due to capitalism, we have grown extremely selfish. That a cause that, like the one of refugees, is only left to the so-called international bodies, like the human rights. The human rights, or what they call it.
UNHCR, United Nations High Commission for Refugees. World Food Program, WFP.
Exactly.
Actually, when you go there, about 97% of the NGOs you find there, they're all international.
Yes. All international.
Yes.
By international,
by international we mean Western
Africa.
Yes.
So
actually,
that is something.
Actually, Mr. Dan, you have brought a very good topic.
Very true.
World Food Program. During the season right now, there is abundance of food in Africa and in Uganda in particular. World Food Program buys food from us. They have silos. They keep it. Then during dry season, when people don't have food, World Food Program now distributes food to you people who actually sold it to them.
So what is critical? What is critical is that Africa actually, even when we talk about climate change, those are not things to do with climate change, things to do with floods. Those are not our biggest problems on the African continent. Our biggest problem on the African continent is inability to know what exactly is our problem. And our problem is that we are ideologically disoriented. We do not put
not
our
ideologically bankrupt, but disoriented.
You can as well mean that. We do not have time to put our heads together to see that, for instance, the problem of Sudan now, Sudan Khartoum, is not that people have got disagreements, because people have always had disagreements. And the truth of the matter is that what is being fought in Sudan now is not the Sudan thing. But somebody has designed a program to make sure that Sudan, which had elevated itself to a level whereby it was peacemaker, becoming a peacemaker in the region, goes to where it is now. And this has always been Africa's problem.
And I can even add to that in the case of Sudan. I think it's important to see the war restarts when Sudan starts to sell more gold. So the more Sudan start to export gold, the more foreign actors start to be interested by getting the gold and melting inside the story of the Sudanese, right? Those foreign actors you're speaking of.
Yes.
So we need to also protect the resources. Protecting resources in this continent also means protecting the people. Because when we protect our resources and we don't let everyone just come and touch it or take it, then we also protect people from the war and the interference that will come with it.
I agree. Mr. Comrade Tatin has brought it very clearly. I'm glad that I will have less of the explaining to do. But the other stuff also is that what he has just explained, there was a comedian, this is a popular American comedian, who was, when they announced that Uganda had all of a sudden,
Trevor Noah. It's South African, not American.
Yes, discovered huge deposits of gold. Then he was like, you wait a minute. It is now America is going to make it her business to tell Uganda who the correct president and the kind of the correct politics should be on the Ugandan soil. And all of a sudden now we are now going to develop all sorts of good policies towards Uganda so that we can have more than enough share of American resources, of Ugandan gold to the American government. This has always been the case, and this is what we are trying to explain. However, going back to NAM, the non-aligned movement, you correctly put it, came around 1961.
1961.
By 1961, countries like India, countries like India, I think that was Gandhi.
Yes,
that was
Gandhi.
Yes.
And Nehru.
Nehru. Countries like Ghana, that was Kwame Nkrumah.
Kwame Nkrumah, of course.
Countries like Egypt, that was Abdul Gamal
Nasser.
Countries like
great one.
yes, there was another one in
Lumumba in Congo.
In the east. In the east, a little bit of Lumumba also, but mainly it was it was mainly Kwame Nkrumah. It was mainly Abdul Gamal Nasser. It was India. The ones we are looking at the formation. There are about four, the biggest frontiers, and. When they came together, the driving force was that they should not be bogged down. There is such a word in English.
It is. Actually, that's an English word.
They should not be bogged
It's not a French
down.
word.
This one I don't know about it, but I trust my camera here.
By the so-called, at that time, the superpowers who had divided themselves into East and West. Because it was either socialism or it was capitalism. And there were certainly, and you remember, of course, it was at the point when the spheres of influence had been created. And of course, the forces of getting rid of colonialism had started forming, and some countries had started gaining independence. We had countries like Cuba, countries like India, etc., which were at the same time also helping out, especially the countries that had been put under direct colonialism. And the principles that was governing non-aligned movement was one, that we should respect each other. There should be mutual respect. For us,
Sovereignty.
our grouping, the sovereignty of the states that had become independent must be protected.
Yes.
Then there was the concept of non-aggression, that we should not participate in being aggressive to each other and extend geographical boundaries into other countries.
Trying to colonize others.
Three, that we should not now start allying ourselves to either I am pro-capitalism or I am pro-socialism. We should be ourselves. Let's keep to ourselves.
I am pro-me.
Nationalist.
And we grow in numbers. Actually, nationalism, like
Take care of your people.
Rutatina is putting it. So this that I have mentioned, among others, I will leave the other issues for my brother Rutatina to point them out. We are at the center stage of non-aligned movement. Of course, from when it was formed up to now, quite a lot has changed. There is a joke that goes around that major participants like Yugoslavia, was it Yugoslavia that exactly, that there are some countries which existed at that time when there were very big members of the non-aligned movement, they are no longer existing. That we are even glad that Uganda, which is a member, is still existing. But what was at the center of this whole thing was that this group of countries identified themselves as weak countries, weak, which needed to also revitalize themselves and grow in power. You see, we are all weak, by the way. Only that some of us don't want to admit that we are weak. The truth of the matter is that America is a very weak country.
America?
Yes, and when you say that America is a very weak country, then France is a very weak country.
Are you sure?
Yes.
That's why we unite in European Union.
Yes. If they were not, there is no country, including China, by the way, that can successfully, for instance, create an enclave economy. China tried to create, by an enclave economy, I mean you close your borders and you say we are going to
become an island
with ourselves.
Yes,
that is not there. The fact that we have got China coming to Africa and creating, China summits. We have got now the G77, which is almost, I think, second to
the second biggest one
to UN. You see, second biggest after UN. Of course, people will argue that now in terms of biting, but who is there to be beaten? That G77, what is it? But you see, let me tell you, there is no loss in having somebody coming together for a good cause. Whether that cause is going to be realized after 100 years. The problem is selfishness. Thinking that when we have started something, it must benefit you directly now. I can assure you that if the thinking was like that, then the independence that the Ngome Nkrumahs were fighting for Uganda would not have been attained. Then the Hurus would not have gotten anything. The Gandhis that we are talking about. You remember the cause, the Indian cause, for instance. There was one of the most outrageous campaigns by Gandhi, whereby the whites had become a very pain in the neck, and he encouraged the natives to go defecating very early in the morning. So you can imagine that. But at the same time, of course, we had the campaigns which were rough, we had, there is a very big member called Cuba.
Cuba.
Actually, Cuba, you can call it Cuba. But you know that up to now, one of her territories, one of the biggest territories within Cuba herself, called the Guantanamo Bay, is still occupied by America. And what are they doing there? They are not growing sugarcane, they are not doing anything, but they have turned it into a very big prison.
Torture chamber.
Torture chambers, they go grab the people they call international terrorists, and those are the people they disagree with ideologically, whom they brand international terrorists, and take them there.
They go to the International Justice Court, but never Guantanamo, America.
We shall talk about that now. Mr. Rudatina.
No, I think most of it have been said. I think we can add the idea that there were capitalism, there was socialism, and the answer was nationalism for the people. I think all those leaders that we named, especially Kwame Nkrumah, we're thinking of the leaders of the what they called themselves at the time the Third World. The leaders of the Third World, they wanted to say, we're not here to fight for capitalism. We're not here to fight for socialism. We are here to fight for our people. Nationalism, patriotism, making sure that our country grow fast. Whatever it grows with the help of you or of you or of you, it's okay. But we need to make sure that we have dignity, we have a strong nation, and we can embrace the world issues as neutral people, right? It's important we understand that it was a reformation of imperialism. Imperialism was here with European powers, the UK, the French, right? The Belgians, the Germans. And at the end of the Second World War, those powers have been defeated. They are not anymore the center of the world. Now the center of the world of gravitation become the USA and the USSR. And they want, both of them, want to reshape the world the way they want. But it's a form of new, it's a new form of imperialism. It's a reorganization.
Actually, I'm being told that the COVID-19 was one of those means the Western world wanted to use to reorganize the world.
There is always in history those moments where the world is changing, everyone feels it, but yet there is nothing new that comes and they have to think about it.
So they had to think about bringing the world to a standstill by bringing COVID.
So you had a situation where African leaders especially were really smart about that. Someone like Kwame Nkrumah, someone like Patrice Lumumba, they didn't say we don't like the US. Kwame Nkrumah was formed and trained in the US. He learned about Pan-Africanism from the US, from Marcus Garvey. So he knew the US really well. But yet we decided to go USSR for his dam because he needed a dam. Because the Americans didn't want to give him the proper loans. So they were playing each other, right? Some leaders decided to do that. Other leaders decided to side on one camp, right? And play for their people using all the method and the approach of USSR or of the USA. What is important is that us, from here, we look at those leaders not as being melted into like the problem of the world, but as a period where they were trying to defend their own people, and the strong power of the time didn't want that, right? They didn't want to defend their own people. I want to get back to one or few points that we have said, because I know my South Africans will look at this video and will say, you guys forget one part about Gandhi. Gandhi lived 27 years in Johannesburg, and he learned about non-violence in Johannesburg. He learned about all of his techniques to liberate India in Africa, right? And when he was in Africa, many believe, and I will let people to make themselves an opinion about these questions, but I know my opinion. Many believe Gandhi was racist. Gandhi was fighting for Indian people. In South Africa, he organized the Indian to tell the white government, don't treat us like black, treat us like white. He didn't say it, Gandhi himself. He organized the Indian in South Africa to march for the end of discrimination against the Indians, not against the black.
Not against the human being.
Not against the human being, not against the black. But yet, he was close to some black lawyers at his time as well. So I will let people make their own opinion. He definitely liberated India from English imperialism. That is for him. That's for him to take. But also in South Africa.
The information here is that actually in one of our campuses on the African continent, particularly Ghana, they brought down the Gandhi's statue because they associated him greatly with racism. maybe just to add that, you see, all of us have got faults. And certainly, Gandhi's contribution to mankind cannot be outweighed with the
But small mistakes, a few mistakes, yes.
Of racism, if ever they appeared. Because by nature we are all racist.
Because,
Yeah, there's also problem like
because
that.
even
But some fight for it and some
there is no perfect human being, but at least you look at the general picture that someone is trying to fight for. Because even there are people who don't agree that Nelson Mandela was actually a great Pan-African.
No,
Nelson
they actually
Mandela
ran him down. They
Yes.
say that he
people in
was a
South
sellout.
Africa, some of them don't believe that Mandela.
They call him a
They believe
sellout.
that it's a white man who actually brought him up for his own selfish interest. The
Yes.
white man, because South Africa, 96% of South Africa's economy is still in the hands of the white people.
That's true.
And this was an agreement between the white people and Mandela before he could leave jail.
This is correct.
So there are people who will say
He didn't manage the land question. But
the land
see,
question, like Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe.
Robert
very
gave it back the
clear.
land to his people.
Yeah.
Nelson never did
What
it.
Nelson Mandela told the South Africans on his deathbed was that the cause, the ANC cause of giving land to the natives has not yet been accomplished. What does that mean? That
So what
the
in
next
progress
generation
should fight for it.
should fight for it. The revolution
The Malemas.
is not yet over.
That's what the
Said
Malema.
it. The economic freedom fighter.
Yes. So
After the political freedom fighter.
So now, I want you to finish on that point of if there is any other fundamental,
Elements.
historical factor that led to the formation of NAM and
So,
G77. Before
when we speak
before
of
I go
NAM,
back to Comrade,
we need to also
Uganda.
remember that at least 50% of its activities are also being driven by African leaders, right? So you spoke of Gamal Abdel Nasser, of course, you spoke of Kwame Nkrumah, but even since, now it's Museveni taking it, even since, like NAM, a lot of members of African states were members of NAM, right? What is important, we think, here in East Africa, is that we know that no one in the world is going to develop us.
but
People will
we
develop
ourselves,
themselves. Exactly.
ourselves.
We cannot wait for China to do it, or we cannot wait for even for Congo to do it. We can only develop ourselves. No one will develop you. People, the great powers, the USSR, the USA, the China, they develop themselves. You never heard about China waiting for the USSR to give them a nuclear plant or things like this. No, they developed themselves. They made agreement with other powers, but they knew they had an agenda, a strong agenda. So I think here, getting back to Uganda, what we can see is that the president has an agenda. The agenda is clear. He wants to be a non-aligned state member, so he can benefit from opportunity from different parts. China, of course, still the Europeans, and also like the African inter-trade, right? We don't want to size, they want to size in one direction on one direction. It is important that we understand that those type of forums are to make sure that everyone speak with each other, and not just the rich and the powerful come to you to ask you something. Because otherwise that's what happened. The American will come and we say, no, you know what, we have this problem at UN. If you vote for us, we'll give you ABCD. No, that's not what we want. What we want is for people to sit together as head of state, as people that can take the decision and say, no, us collectively, this is what we can ask to these people or to these people. Or we can also say, we have a say about the war in Gaza. We have a say about the war in Ukraine or Russia. We have a say about what NATO is doing. We have a say about what's happening in Sudan. So it is important that world leaders gather like this outside of the institution, because those institutions that are born after the Second World War, and I think it's very important to say that, those institutions are dying. A lot of those institutions are dying, so they need to be recreated, reorganized, and rearranged. And I think that's what President Museveni is doing here. He's also having different type of conversation with different actors. That's why we have the Plus China. Part of it is that. The G77 are the people that have experienced imperialism. At some point of the history, they have experienced imperialism.
That's what brings them together,
And I think
because they have suffered
They are still experiencing
exactly my point.
imperialism, actually.
They are
Maybe
still
to say they experienced colonialism, but most importantly now they are still experiencing imperialism
and neocolonialism.
and neocolonialism.
Neocolonialism. And so in order to defeat, right, the Hydra, let's call it the devil, right, it is important to exchange. What have they done to you? What have they promised you for your petrol? Why is it that do they find money for your pipeline or do they not find money? Did you bring the petrol Do they pay for it? Do they not pay for it? What is it that is happening? How is neocolonialism growing or shrinking? Because the neocolonialists, they speak to each other. They know what each other is doing. They look at each other. So it's important as an answer, as a form of resistance, people that have the, you know, for me it's like a vaccine. When you experience colonialism, when you experience imperialism, you're vaccinated against it.
You are vaccinated
You
against.
you can see it from far.
Yes.
You can see the problem coming straight. Long time before you look at them, and that's why South Africa, that have experienced colonialism is the state that have experienced colonialism the longest in Africa. 400 years of colonialism. What do? When they see Israel going to Gaza to attack the Gazawites like this, to attack Palestinians like this, to deprive them from their
They
land,
see the problem coming from afar.
they see the problem coming from far. And they are the first one to call it out. The first one to call it out to the international court, right?
And
So they call.
kudos to them for having done that.
It's a pride of they are the pride of the continent right now. With the Namibians that also attack the Germans to tell them, before you start speaking of other people's genocide, look at what you did here in Namibia with the Herero, right? So Namibians and South Africans right now, we are really, really proud of them.
So
That is
now-
for sure.
So now, Comrade Rugarama, of all the African countries, 55 of them now, it's only South Africa that officially goes and lodges a case against Israel. Is it because of the same experience that they are having, that other countries don't seem to feel the same neocolonialism or even colonialism? So they think South Africa and Palestine are one and the same in terms of experience. The rest of us in Africa, it is okay. That's why they have decided to fold their hands like this and look at South Africa and start cheering at them. That's why you are cheering them. Thank you so much. But 1 out of 55 countries in Africa.
First of all,
not any one of them.
Comrade Rumba, it's an embarrassment that it's countries, by the way, that refer such cases to ICC.
ICC.
If it were individuals, then on behalf of the Pan-African movement,
We would have
me and you
would have gone.
there.
Yeah,
But,
my condemnation is
you
about
will-
the 55 countries.
I'm coming.
Let's take away.
You will attempt to do it. I can assure you, with all that this government knows about this Garama here, this Rumba here, we shall get arrested. Because
They will think you are trying to invite trouble.
absolutely, some of these things
onto
are
their
not
country.
as simple as. But ideologically speaking, I want to believe that when our patron and the patron of the Pan-African movement and the president of the Republic of Uganda, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, sees what the South Africans have done, if it were not for these other inhibitions, he would have either joined them or he would have been the first to do it. But I will come to these other inhibitions that I have just referred to: Ghana, Uganda, Tanzania, Egypt, Algeria. Majority of these countries which were colonized, but at the same time which had the fight to rid themselves of colonialism at its highest, shy away from referring little Israel to ICC. Even when we have our own issues with ICC, by the way, it's not that we so much believe in ICC.
No one does.
But since it is the creation of the powers that be,
That was.
although the Americans themselves
So
are
is it-
not members,
But
they don't go
They pay.
there.
But they
and
pay
they
for it.
cannot allow their members to be referred there. What we are saying is that at least let us also make them dishonorable in their own place. Let's take them there and
own
see how they are going to get treated. And I think South Africa, without doubt, is a pride, like my brother Rotatin here has said, of Africa so far as the human rights is concerned. Because we are not looking at the literal political differences between Julius Malema and then
ANC.
the ANC, and then the getting out of, recently our former president Zuma jumped out of ANC, and we are not. That one has been now overtaken by the fact that we have got South Africa, an African country from the African continent,
taking Israel to ICJ.
And you know what is interesting? The Arab nations, and I was very proud, by the way, at first when I saw Egypt calling upon the brothers, the big brothers, to come. There was a very serious conference in Cairo about the activities of Israel in Palestine. But I was shocked as to how they had not, maybe they also didn't have faith in the ICC, this ICC that we are talking about. But they are now slowly coming to join South Africa to see that this case takes root, matures, and we wait as to what the ICC is actually going to say. But I am not claiming to be a Jewish prophet. But I will tell you that I so much doubt that our inept ICC, as far as the other communities are concerned, is actually going to say something of significance in as far as the situation in Gaza is concerned.
Mr. Rutatina.
Yes.
Uganda hosting one of the biggest, groupings of the world here. Huh? During the very time that the Western world is trying to secede from Uganda and even actually stopping most of their aid on the basis of what you know very well, the law that was passed recently. But then you have so many of these countries, about 40-something, coming here, not bothered about America's perception about Uganda. Definitely. What does that reflect?
That definitely reflects.
I'll begin with you, then go to Comrade.
It's a great strategy that has been put in place here. I don't know exactly when was that meeting decided, but it's clear that at the moment, Americans try to withdraw because of trying to impose their own politics on foreign country. It is clear that other countries will come and go on the rescue of Uganda and will come and help you, right? It is important that we show, and I think Ugandans have shown that to the world, that their own politics is their own politics. They decide. It does not mean that we refuse any type of help. Thomas Sankara used to say, I never refuse help, neither from the French, neither from the Russians. We accept help, but on our own terms. On our own terms. It is really important, and I think that's what Museveni is doing here. Museveni has bring around him, and of course he's not the only one in doing the job, but he has bring around a lot of leaders that knows exactly what he is fronting. That knows exactly that at the moment where politicians try to melt on developing their own politics that goes outside of the global agenda, then there is fight back. There is fight back. And it's important that countries support each other on that regard. And also organize the fight back like the South Africans are doing in Israel, with Israel, in the International Criminal Court. So when we think of that event, personally, as let's also say, like I'm new here, right? It's the first time I'm seeing such a big summit, right? Yeah. And I can see it's well organized. I can see the city is really well organized. The security is high up. I can see the media are speaking about it. The citizens also are speaking about it. So I think what's important here is to pass a message. The message is Uganda is strong, but in the agenda of making coalitions that support our own people.
Our own agenda.
Exactly.
Should be our agenda as Uganda, as Africa.
Exactly.
Comrade Garama.
Yes, indeed.
What are you saying about America thought by openly coming out, they were very bold. Because of ABCD, we are stopping ABCD. We are even putting embargoes on some of your individuals in their country. They were very specific. They have stopped AGOA, they have stopped this and that. But then you see, as they are doing that, other world countries are actually gearing up to come to Uganda. They want to be part of Uganda. They want to be part of the movement. So, does America still hold those powers where they use, to hold people at ransom and say, if I don't agree with Thomas here, Lisafri, Mutatina, Rugarama, you should not deal with him. If you do, you are my enemy. My enemy is your enemy. The rest of the country saying no.
No.
If you don't agree with Uganda, for us we will kill. In fact, China is even more aggressive. Whatever America is trying to pull out from, China is coming. Mr. Garab.
What?
Isn't that a vote of no confidence? Someone has been saying I am the Kirimani, I am the powerful man. But now, even the little country is saying, if you don't agree with Rugarama, we have no problem with him.
And they're not so little.
What has happened is that for a very long time now, the people around the world have been, through their actions, voting against the American government in many ways. You know for a fact that when they organize votes, UN resolutions, in majority of the cases, they are looking at who is with us and who is against us.
Who is against us?
Truth be told, and I said this before, here and elsewhere, that those countries which neither voted for or against, and they remained non-aligned, they themselves were actually running away from the American muscle, the American big brotherhood. But in actual sense, you group all those countries and their vote says that we actually don't support you, America, what you are trying to do. There is nobody in his or her right senses can support what Israel is doing in Gaza.
In Gaza.
For instance, there is nobody who actually wants to place himself or herself on the list of proper analysts of global affairs who can say that we think that really what the group, this America plus Europe is doing in
G7
in Ukraine is correct. Of course, we look at Russia throwing missiles, and any person who is whose level of analysis only stops at what CNN and BBC are saying will say, no, the aggressor is Russia, but we know better than that. Therefore, we have seen, like you are bringing it up, America closing us away from AGOA simply because our parliament here said, no, we are not homosexuals and we don't need to hear that word. We don't need to promote it.
Even mentioning it.
Mentioning it, that's not us. And they said, no, we can exercise our power and then we shall teach you. I've listened to the European parliaments. I take my time when I'm not into this African and other types of football. You know, I support football, the Premiership. I support because I have seen some of our brothers there who are doing a good job. And my team is the French team.
Actually, in World Cup,
team because
there is a team that had 97% African.
Yes.
Where did I learn Africa is the future?
I have no problem with
the football team.
The French national
They get the World Cup. They bring the World Cup.
Because these are my people.
97% of the French team is African, but they say we have won.
And when Noah, the comedian again, said that Africa has taken the World Cup, the ambassador, the French ambassador to America came out to all gun blazing. He said, no, you can't say that. He said, but apart from the fact that this is a comedy show, the truth of the matter is that really this was Africa. Anyway, jokes aside, we like the assimilation policy of the French to the extent that they can truly keep the taps to the level of we are the same. But we know better than that.
If I can add something about that,
yes.
What is when there's a World Cup of football, you will find that around 25% of all the players have been trained in France. Some of them play for Senegal, some of them play for Algeria, some play in Guinea. But what it says for me is that when the French accept to give a chance and to educate people equally, right, then the right people come out. And I think what's important for me in that story is that not only the French team is African, but a lot of African teams are trained by French people as well.
Yes.
And what it means is that
Coaches.
collaboration that is based on education and personal growth, empowerment, it works.
Wow.
It works.
Yes.
There is great educators, such as the father of Kylian Mbappe, a Cameroonese,
Mhm.
that married a Nigerian in France, but believe in education, believe in putting the right empowerment for his son. He made his son the best player in the world for France. But his education is coming from Cameroon. He has experienced also Algeria. So all of this together make great players like Mbappe, make great players like Paul Pogba, right?
When
And
you
they make
come-
great leadership.
In other words, the summary of it is that when you come with clean hands
Exactly.
to anything, you get it clean.
You then it works.
But if somebody is, for whatever reason, is holding the dirty hand behind, and at the point of engagement is the very hand that he brings out, purporting that it is actually the clean hand, then we get a problem and a mixture. But anyhow, that aside, the American government, with those who support the Americans in their foreign policy, have now learned the hard way that they can no longer do the things they used to do about 20, 15, 10 years ago. Weaponization of their foreign policy does not help anybody. They weaponized the dollar, for instance, whereby those who were holding the dollar, they would put economic embargo upon you and they would freeze your accounts.
Because
That's
you use
why
the dollar.
China, Russia, India, and these other so many other countries, by the way, said no, we can form the BRICS and we shall not be using the dollar. Now, when you want to weaponize the dollar by freezing our accounts, by crippling our trade, we shall see how we are going to do it when we actually not using your dollar. That is one lesson, therefore, that Americans by now should have learned. That the more you weaponize something where you should be attracting people. In the past, they could use the World Bank and IMF, and they weaponize everything because when you unmask a lot of CIA intelligence information, you will find that governments on the African continent and elsewhere have fallen simply because of the American policy and the use of the dollar weaponizing.
Actually, what I see is that America is failing maybe to reinvent itself. The mechanisms they would use centuries ago to manipulate Africa, they think today you can still implement it.
It cannot work
like they wanted to do. Russia.
And the French do the same mistake.
Yes, Russia, because of the war with Ukraine, they say now we are going to stop trading with you with a dollar. Then Russia says, okay, if you are stopping the dollar, I am starting my own here. And then
actually what Russia has done is even not to say we are putting an alternative. No, they are saying we have got our resource.
Yes.
It is a natural resource. You see, the first thing that Russia did was the most important thing. To say, you can't attack me militarily to start with. You will fail. And the moment you guarantee that, the moment you cut down the power of the cabals whereby you cannot attack me militarily, then we now go on even. In terms of trade, I don't have to trade with you in dollars.
It's important we know one thing. I don't know if you will agree with me here, but every single European power from yesterday until today is based on African resources. The French become powerful because they had an empire. The British become powerful because they had an empire. And right now we saw the Russian becoming more powerful than any other European countries. What does it tell you? It tells you they take it from here.
Yes.
And what do they take? They take the gold of Sudan. Okay, make some research about that. I've made some video. Look online.
The Russians.
The Russian at the beginning of the war went to Sudan to steal the gold of Sudan so they can pay and they can de-dollarize. They can stop paying dollars.
They are still stealing. They are still there.
Exactly. They are stealing the gold of Sudan as we speak. So yes, we don't say the NATO are right, but we also don't say the Russians are right. What we say is that we want to use our resources here in Africa for ourselves and stop giving our resources to foreign powers. Whatever it's petrol, whatever it's gold, whatever it's diamond. Back in the day it was rubber. Before even that it was salt. Before even that it was the gold of the Empire of Mali. We want that resources to be transformed here and to be used here. We are tired of empowering other powers. The Russians, they need the gold of Africa to fight the Americans.
It doesn't matter.
The Russians need the gold of Africa to fight the Americans. That's a problem. It's not to say Russia is bad or NATO is bad, is good. It's more to say every single power that want to make it strong in Europe, that want to get to the global stage, can only do it with African resources. Europe is really small. Okay, Russia is big, but Europe in its own is small. And what it means is that they need to capture other resources to build their power.
Okay, I want to end with on this one. I want to end with all of you should give me a comment. 1 minute each. There's a country in Africa here that has actually stopped French as an official language, and this has been their official language since 1960. That country is Mali.
Oh, Mali, yeah.
Mali. No, Mali.
Was long, they did it also, but recently it's Mali.
Recently it's Mali.
Yeah.
Mali has stopped actually using French as the official language. Rwanda, Mali and Rwanda, which one did the first?
Rwanda did it first.
Stopped first.
It was Kagame, because the French intervened at the time of the
Because
genocide.
you colonized them.
It was the Belgium that colonized Rwanda,
Yes.
but the French had a bias with Kagame. So Kagame punished the French as soon as he took power. He said France is not an official language anymore, which, by the way, make a lot of sense for Rwandan people. When you go to Rwanda, who speak French? No one speaks French. Kinyarwanda is a good language, and if you don't understand Kinyarwanda, you're gonna speak a bit of Swahili.
Yes.
You're gonna speak a bit of Swahili, and you're gonna understand each other, right? So rather than trying to impose like language that no one speaks,
But
for the
maybe
state and for administration.
The information here is, by the way,
Yes.
even then, the question that Ndugu Rumba has posed, and coming to what you have just said, that how many people in Uganda understand and actually do speak French, I can assure you that even in Uganda here, they say Uganda is an English-speaking country. But what is the percentage of those of us
Who speak
who
English?
speak English?
Honestly. And and why do you have to learn English? The problem is the access to the state.
So what
if you
was
don't
the
speak
question
French,
in Comrade Rumba about the Mali stopping French?
Assimi Goïta, that's the name of the Malian new president. He kicked out the French. He kicked out the French army, and he take out French language as the main language of Mali of a Mali state, right? What he's doing is also what I found even more interesting is that he asked for an alliance with Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, right? And Niger also is now thinking of taking French out of the constitution as an official language, because, as you say, most people of the new generation, they don't want to speak those language. They have no interest into speaking those language. So it's not so much about which language you speak. The question is, why is it happening only in 2024? It's happening only in 2024 because as soon as colonialism ended, neocolonialism starts. Neocolonialism starts, and when we say we got independence, they like us to say, Africa is independent. There is those type of strings between those countries. And Assimi Goïta right now is cutting all the strings. But let's not be naive. As you said it, he has to re-emplace the French with some other form of power. And he chose Russia. And I think he negotiated on his own terms, which is good for the Mali people. And Russian plus Malians have took back Kidal, which was a city occupied by I don't know how to call them, but by foreigners or by Tuareg movement. I don't know, but it was not the Malian that had it anymore, and they couldn't take it back. So now they took it back. It's a great success of a great African nation, of a great African army, right? That get helped by Wagner. But at the end of the day, what we need to support is the attempt to go together and to reinforce some form of Pan-Africanism between Mali, Burkina, and Niger. Because when you kick out the French, when you kick out the master, the old colonial master that become the neo-colonial master, you need some help. You cannot do it just yourself.
Well,
you need some help. You need to be strong together.
I'm afraid time is not our best ally, Comrade Safri Mutatina. This man has an African name, nicknamed by Mr. Dan Rugarama
Yes.
Rutatina. The man speaks, he actually speaks what others fear. Mr. Thomas Elisafi from France.
have added here.
And Comrade Dan Rugama. By the way, Dan Rugama is a lawyer and is the chairman of Pan-African Movement Uganda chapter. My name is Andrew Irumba Katusebe, your speaker, and we are saying, Africa, don't agonize, organize. Africa, don't agonize,
organize.
One Africa, one people.
People.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusa.